Hello! Thank you for being in a new video. This time I have a full review of the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. Let's get started. This is possibly one of the most popular cameras for content creators because of the quality it offers in a very compact size. Generally, many record with their cell phone for the convenience and practicality of always carrying it in their pocket. And for that reason, they prefer the cell phone compared to a large camera. But in this case, we see a 1-inch sensor for the camera that is going to receive much more illumination, and therefore the results are very advanced, but keeping a very compact body and above all a totally superior stabilization. So before going in depth to know all the details of this camera, let me tell you about its price. Since there are two versions, the standard edition and the creator's edition that includes more accessories. The basic edition is priced in Mexico at 11,399 pesos. That is approximately $680, although remember that the prices here are not the same as over there, and the creator's combo goes up to 14,399 pesos, which is more or less $860, more or less. So just take it as a reference. But at this price, I think it competes very well because it is a price where you are just starting to get into semi-professional cameras. But the image quality that it gives us is really very good, so join me to know all its details. This is what the design of this camera looks like. As you can see, it is extremely compact. In fact, just so you have a clearer reference, this is how it would look compared to the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Notice that it's less tall, although it's obviously thicker. It's 33.5 millimeters thick, but it actually compensates quite well for the fact that it's very compact and fits perfectly well in the hand and in the pocket. And the design is quite simple in terms of buttons because it only has the power button, which is also going to be used for recording or taking pictures, and a joystick. So note that the power on can be by holding down the button, or it can also be by rotating the screen. You can turn those kinds of features on or off. And once the camera is on, you can just press once to start your recording or your picture taking. And with the joystick, you can move the camera all the way around to adjust it in the direction you want it to go, or you could also manipulate the zoom depending on your settings. Remember that this camera has a rotating screen, which I'll tell you about in a moment, but notice how turning it on immediately reveals its 3-axis stabilizer that's really going to give you a picture quality in terms of stability that's exaggeratedly good. Completely better than what you would find in a cell phone and even in dedicated cameras of this price. So, you gain a lot of quality in that aspect. The camera weighs in at 179 grams and is constructed primarily of plastic, so it's light, it's comfortable, it doesn't have any built-in mount, but instead comes with a USB-C port. But it does come with an additional accessory integrated in the box from the standard edition, even if you don't buy the creator version. And note that with this additional mount, we're going to add this thread that you could mount on some tripod or similar accessories, and the USB port is moved to the back area. So this accessory can be quite useful, but if you want to keep the camera as compact as possible, you can also remove this optional accessory. As you will notice, it does not include any other additional port, micro HDMI or something similar. It only has USB-C, and on the other side we will find the slot to place the micro SD cards. But despite not having an HDMI output through the USB-C port, we can connect it to a computer and it will detect it as a webcam. The signal is in full HD, so you could perfectly transmit with this camera to your computer connected via USB. In fact, through its application you could stream directly to YouTube, but if you want to use the camera as an input source and do a much more advanced streaming, you can also connect it to your computer. The camera integrates Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so it has good connectivity, and as for the indicator LEDs, note that one appears on the front in a green color when it is in standby. It turns red if you are recording some video, so you are aware of that action, and it is blinking. When you finish your video recording, it goes back to the green state, so I think it's a pretty handy indicator. The screen, as I was telling you, is rotating, and in this case we're talking about a 2-inch panel with OLED technology, so it's going to offer us very good color, also good viewing angles. Although generally these OLED screens are not used too much in cameras because the indicators are constantly static and could become marked in prolonged use, but definitely the image quality is completely good. We are also in front of a touchscreen that we can also take advantage of to change the settings and some other elements directly from it. So it is a useful screen that, by the way, has a resolution of 314 by 556 pixels. So it is going to give us a good quality also to review the content we are recording. Unfortunately, the camera does not have any level of protection against water and dust, so that will be its main point to consider against. Although from the standard edition they include this case to transport the camera safely, however the bottom area is not very well protected and I do not quite understand the reason. The edition for creators also includes this case where you can also carry your accessories and not just the camera, so it is a good complement. Regarding the audio, we will find 3 microphones, 1 on the back and 2 on the sides, so it is capable of capturing surround sound, stereo sound and directional sound. Overall, the quality of the microphones is good, but let's listen to a test below. This is an audio test recorded with this camera. I am in an environment where you hear a lot of birds, there is not much wind, and this would be the quality of the built-in microphones of this camera. However, if you are going to record in a noisy environment and you have the camera far away from you, it is obvious that you will need an external microphone. And in this case, there is no 3.5mm jack to connect an external microphone. So it could be a disadvantage, but you have to consider that DJI has the most famous wireless microphones on the market. And in this case, the receiver is already integrated, so you don't need to connect any other type of receiver. You just need to buy the second generation DJI mic. But if you buy the version for creators is already included in the package, then you can perfectly place this microphone near you and the audio will be captured directly and transmitted wirelessly to the camera. And DJI already has a very good reputation, so it's going to be virtually impossible for you to have any interruptions or cuts in your audio using this technology. In fact, you can also attach this accessory to this microphone to avoid wind noise that could be picked up in outdoor environments. This accessory is also included in the combo for creators and can be a very good tool. In fact, in the combo for creators is also included this strap to carry more easily the camera and this base so you can place it more securely on a table. Although because of its square design, even without using this base, it can stand upright on a table or on the floor if it's flat enough. And speaking specifically of the microphone, note how it is an automatic linking. You simply turn on the microphone via its power button and immediately the camera detects that it is already connected, and it's that simple. But if you were to buy an additional microphone, you just press the pairing button and on the camera you just go into the settings. And under wireless microphone you can connect the second transmitter. So it really works quite handy. And notice how on the main screen the volume monitor pops up so you can detect if you're talking too loud or the sound is clipping. So it can also be very useful, that monitor. And remember that this microphone can be charged via USB-C or also has its charging pins, so that in case you buy it separately with its case, it can be charged simply by storing it as with wireless headphones. In this case, the Creator Edition only includes the microphone but does not come with a charging case, so you need to charge it through its USB-C connector. Remember that this microphone also has local storage, so you could press the record button so that the audio recordings are saved to the internal storage and you have a backup copy. Although I insist that it is very rare that you have any interference in your audio, but if you want to have that second backup, you can press this button and notice how the red indicator LED will indicate that the recording is in progress or has also stopped. Also, this microphone has a built-in clip so you can easily attach it to surfaces, clothing or somewhere, and it also has a magnet with a lot of strength so you can place it behind your clothes, and this way you could have the microphone hanging with a floating effect, or you could just show the magnet in front if you want a more discreet design. So, it's worth having DJI's external microphone, which I insist comes included in the combo for creators, but you could purchase a second microphone if you like to record videos with more people. And regarding the speaker, note that it's on the front so you can review videos. Obviously, its volume will be simple just so you can make sure if your audio was recorded correctly. Now you're watching the video recorded directly with this camera, although I'm still using a microphone with the external audio. This camera integrates a 1-inch CMOS sensor. It's an excellent quality sensor and the sensor is around 9.4 megapixels. The lens that it integrates is about 20 millimeters with autofocus and f2.0 aperture, so it integrates a very good light input. But in the creator combo, they also integrate this accessory, which is a small lens that will open up the angle to 15 millimeters. So notice the difference. This is the normal angle, and now I'm going to attach this lens, and this would be the 15 millimeter angle, still with more space around it. Although like any lens, you have to be careful, because if you get to touch the inside, it's going to smudge and you could end up with a very ugly result like the one you'll see below. This is what it would look like if the lens was stained, so you have to be very careful to keep the lens clean and have a good quality, but it's a nice accessory to add even more width to the camera. As you saw a moment ago, this camera also has good focusing capabilities, focusing at a distance of 20 centimeters. The manufacturer claims that it focuses at a distance of 20 centimeters, although it seems to me that it is even less distance at which it is able to focus. So it also offers us very good quality for showing products or similar things. But although it is a camera whose main purpose is video recording, it is also capable of taking photographs. It can do it in a square format at 9.4 megapixels or in a horizontal format 16:9 with 8.2 megapixels, which would be the 4K resolution. In addition, it is capable of giving us manual parameters and it can take pictures in RAW. So, I insist, even though it's not a still camera, it could take some pictures. Let's see its results. And even though I'm not an expert, let me show you some pictures it takes, and thanks to the fact that it has an autofocus lens, the result is very nice. Notice how in the pictures we have a good blur in the background, completely natural. It is nothing artificially generated. Although the level of detail is not exaggeratedly high because the photographs are 8 megapixels, but it is fine for a good number of people. However, in backlight, using the automatic mode, you are not going to have a very good result, as the background will appear completely overexposed and burnt. But remember that the device allows you to take pictures in RAW, and in this case, see how I developed this picture with a better balance of lights. So whoever knows how to move all these parameters will undoubtedly have good editing capabilities thanks to this RAW photo. Because you can see how you can easily show again these areas that were completely burned out. So raw photography will be a very important thing for photography lovers, which does give you very good information. Although a fair number of people will simply use the automatic mode, and in this mode I think we don't have as much detail in these kinds of indoor conditions, although it still handles noise well enough. At night it becomes more difficult to define the level of detail well. So it is not a camera that is so recommended for taking pictures, even though it is capable of doing so. What I like most about the camera is the blur it naturally generates. So the closer you are to the camera, you can get to generate a little bit more of the blur. The camera in general is going to perform well. Fortunately, it has a good quality lens, so you don't get to see any edge distortion or anything strange. Just the 8 megapixel level of detail for photography falls a bit short compared to what other cameras give. But even moving objects can be sharp. In this case, the green wheel was spinning at a good speed and you can see that it comes out in good quality. The camera does offer digital zoom, although it is obviously very limited. It is a maximum zoom of 2x and you immediately notice that it is digital zoom, so it is not a specialist in this section. Indoors, it managed to control noise well. It maintains a detail according to what we have seen in this sensor and a good color saturation. At night, I only took pictures with the automatic mode, although the more experienced will obviously be able to take better advantage of the capabilities of this camera if they take pictures in RAW, but in automatic mode it is acceptable. What I found very interesting is that this camera can even take macro shots thanks to the autofocus, which is unusual in this type of compact cameras. And by the way, the camera can also take slightly wider pictures thanks to a panorama mode that takes several pictures and combines them into one, resulting in a 15 megapixel picture. But now let's talk about video recording. And to start with, let me tell you about the resolutions in which it can record. Obviously, in automatic mode, it will be the most advanced, but it has different frames per second settings. From a cinema format at 24 frames per second up to 60 frames per second in auto mode if you like these more fluid videos, or you can go up to 120 frames per second in slow motion mode. I'll tell you about the examples in a moment. It also has a low light mode where you can get up to 30 frames per second recording in 4K, but it is also available recording in 25 frames per second, 48 or 50 as somewhat intermediate and not very common formats. But it is appreciated that it is available in case someone prefers this type of recording. In fact, recording in 2.7K and 1080p resolution at the same frames per second settings is also available. You could also choose to record in a square format if you prefer, and obviously it can also record in portrait format without the need for you to rotate the camera, although in this case you won't be able to record in 4K, but the resolution is still very good at 3K. In addition, for the more professional, it also integrates recording methods where you can colorize in post-production and take advantage of more information from the sensor and light management. So it records in a D-Log-M format at 10 bits or in HLG to take advantage of a wide dynamic range. I'll show you the results in a moment. The video recording is really very good, not only because of the good quality it supports in terms of resolution, but that good level of detail is reflected. It also handles colors well and does not seem to have jumps in exposure or instability in focus. So I think it has very good control over its recording. With a button, you can quickly rotate it towards you to record in a selfie mode, and as I told you, the picture generates a very nice blur in the background in a natural way. So, for recording vlogs, it is an excellent tool because the rotation of the camera is very simple, and above all, because of the good stabilization it has. We'll do more aggressive testing in a moment, but for now, let me also tell you that in auto mode, it has a little less dynamic range, but in a moment, I'll tell you how you can shoot to improve this aspect. So, in backlit scenarios, it can get to slightly overexpose the background, although either way from auto mode, it handles it very well. But before I talk about that, let me tell you about the stabilization, which is really very good. Remember, it has 3-axis stabilization through this gimbal. So it's going to have really good stabilization when you're walking and even when you're running. Notice how the camera manages to stay extremely stable. Depending on the mode selected, you can make the camera pan to one side with the joystick or pan to follow your every move. Even when recording in 4K at 60 frames per second, you can see how well stabilized it is. So I think that's pretty spectacular. For action scenes, it's very good. But for the more professional, good news is that this camera supports recording in a log format for later colorization. This format will give you a better dynamic range. A moment ago, I showed you how there were a bit more overexposed areas in the video recording, but through this mode, you can get a better management of lighting and color, and I insist the most professional will enjoy it. But even better, in backlit conditions, you can record in an HLG mode that will preserve the HDR characteristics. So if you view these videos on compatible devices, the brightest areas are going to be brighter on the screens, giving a very realistic feel. So it really is a camera that has very good video recording capabilities. Indoors, I didn't like the color accuracy as much. I think it could improve in that regard, giving a slightly warmer scene. Although you could also manipulate the white balance manually if you notice that the video is not very accurate in color management. Noise masks it well, although it's not completely noise-free. So I would recommend shooting more with manual mode on the white balance if you're shooting indoor scenes. And at night, it's probably best to shoot with log or HLG mode for better quality in terms of light and shadow control. But the camera shows that it is very capable of capturing good light information even in the darkest scenes. Although it is not completely noise-free, but it is appreciated that it has good lighting input. Even note that in the darkest scenes where there is really very little illumination, this camera manages to recover quite a bit of light. Although I insist it is not completely free of noise, but believe me, it is an excellent performance that you would not find in a smartphone in front cameras. So this camera becomes a good tool because it offers us an excellent quality to record both in the back and in selfie mode because it is the same camera. It also includes the hyperlapse mode, which is going to help you quite well. You can configure many of its parameters, and also the video is in a high bit rate, so anytime you pause the clip, it's still seen with a good level of detail, and it even maintains excellent dynamic range and obviously good stabilization. And on the other hand, the slow motion in full HD can be up to about 240 frames per second, although I should tell you that the file is at 30 frames per second. That is, it's already processed, just for your consideration. And if you want to, you have 4K at 120 frames per second, but again, the file is already processed at 30 frames per second, so you have to speed it up if you want it to look at normal speed. But it's no big deal, it's just to let you know how the camera behaves. So this is one of its most attractive features, because at this price, I don't know if there is another camera that lets you record in 4K at 120 frames per second. And with respect to the focus, it has 3 modes. One which is fixed focus. In this case, notice how I'm out of focus because the focus is set at a medium distance. So in this scene, there was nothing at a distance where I did have the focus. But it also has continuous focus, that is autofocus, that is going to respond normally. If you place an object centered in front of it, it will focus on it. And it might even focus on them if you put them to the side, but it has a specific mode to make this focus work even better, which is the product demo. So even if you don't get your hand too close, it's going to adjust the focus so that you can show your audience something. So for content creators, I insist that this is a very good tool. Most cameras on the market won't have this kind of behavior for product focus. So it really is an excellent camera, except for the zoom. Notice how in video recording we're also going to have a limited zoom up to 2x, and you immediately notice that it's digital zoom. So this would be its main weakness, but everything else is very good. But now let me show you how the camera works, in case you want to learn how to control it. As soon as you turn the screen, the camera is going to turn on, and in the bottom left corner is going to appear the button for the different capture modes. You can then press this button and navigate with a horizontal scroll to the mode you want. By default, there are the traditional modes, but you can also specifically add some shortcuts with settings you want if you want to record in different formats and switch between them faster. Within the photo mode, note that also if we slide from the right to the left, we can access some additional settings such as exposure management if we want a manual exposure. We can also change the white balance, and also if we want to take pictures in JPG or also in RAW. We can also change the focus style in this section, so those are the settings that you can handle, or you could also turn off all the pro settings and just go for the automatic mode. If we swipe from left to right, we access the gallery where we can review the contents with a vertical scroll, and if we slide from bottom to top, we can configure the format of our photo in terms of proportion, or also enter a timer. And finally, if we scroll from top to bottom, we access the additional settings that we will see in a moment. But first, let me show you that also in this part it has another slider which by default works for the zoom, but you could also interchange it with the joystick so that through the joystick you control the zoom, and with the slider you control the rotation of the camera. And within the video mode we have practically the same operation. From bottom to top you choose the format of your recording, and in this case also adds an automatic detection of your face with active track, which can keep you always framed. Or you can also select the dynamic framing, or finally the spin shot, which will automatically rotate the camera to give even more attractive results. And by swiping from the right to the left, you can access some other professional video settings. For example, you can control the exposure completely to your liking, also the white balance, and it has a glamour mode, which we could say is a beauty mode, but you need to connect to the mobile app to use that mode. You can also manage the recording mode in terms of color, which I mentioned a moment ago with the more professional modes, and you can change the focus style, and also in the image adjustment you can access a personal mode where you can also manage sharpness and noise reduction. So it has several parameters that you can use to control the image style of the camera. And the same operation you will have in the different modes. You can adjust some things in terms of resolution or manual parameters. So the truth is that the navigation in the camera is pretty straightforward. In the hyperlapse mode will be where maybe you have more options if you want a normal hyperlapse, time lapse or motion lapse. So we have several parameters but focused on fast motion. Finally, let's head over to the quick settings, because in this part we have the presets that you've created as quick recording settings that you prefer with different settings. We also have the button to rotate the screen to start recording immediately if you want that setting. And you can also control the brightness of the screen, or we also have active track in selfie mode so that you're always in frame when you rotate to record yourself. You can also change the style of the stabilizer. I mean, you can have this tracking style which in a slow way will give you a continuity to all the movements that you make, but you could also use the fixed tilt method, which as you'll see always keeps the crosshairs in a format that's looking straight ahead. So it could also help you in certain shots. Or finally, you have the FPV format, which can also give you a different tilt when you are recording. But for most people, the tracking mode will be good enough. Then we will find a button where you can adjust the speed at which this stabilizer rotates if you want more action scenes and you want a faster rotation, or you want it to move slower for a more cinematic style. Then we will also find the adjustment of the video recording, since even with the horizontal screen you could record in vertical format if you prefer. But it would be best to rotate the screen so that you can have a much more spacious viewfinder. This can also be managed automatically. And finally, we enter the complete settings. Here we can configure our wireless microphones, select whether we want the camera to point towards us or backwards when we turn it on. We can also select the behavior when rotating the screen from landscape to portrait so that the camera turns off immediately or gives you 2 seconds of standby, or finally that it does not turn off even when you rotate the screen. You can also select what you want the on-screen slider to control, and you can also activate whether you want the selfies to rotate to be seen in an inverted view. You can also select whether you want the wireless microphone to immediately make a backup recording, which I was telling you about a moment ago, and also the OTG connection to connect it to an Android or a computer directly with the USB-C port and browse all its content. Finally, there are the wireless connectivity settings, and it also has a portable mode where the camera is going to behave differently with respect to stabilization. Finally, you can calibrate the stabilizer in case you feel that the camera is no longer going in the right direction, and finally set the speed at which the joystick behaves. You can also configure the intensity of the sounds when interacting with the system and enable a grid to allow better framing. In addition, it includes anti-flicker functions so that when recording a screen you can avoid those annoying flickering black lines, and you can also change the names or customize if you want the screen to be off when recording or never turn off while you are recording. This option would help you to consume a little less battery in case you want it to, and it also has the automatic shutdown to prevent the camera from staying on without recording for a long time. And you can also disable the LED in case you are recording in some dark scenarios where you don't want any interruption. Finally, you can change the language and connect to live streams from the mobile app directly to YouTube. So as you see, it offers us good options also in the software. And as for the battery, the manufacturer promises 2.5 hours or so recording in full HD at 24 frames per second with the screen off. I personally did another test to see if it more or less came close to the manufacturer's figures, and it held 2 hours 38 minutes recording in full HD at 30 frames per second with the screen on set to 50% brightness. So I think if you turn the screen off, it could give more than 2.5 hours, although in this case the camera was static. So there are a lot of factors to take into account for battery life, because if you're moving around a lot, the stabilizer motors will also be working harder and the battery will drain faster. And recording in 4K continuously, it took 2.25 hours, so the battery life doesn't drop too much when recording in this resolution. And one thing I should also tell you is that even though it got very hot recording in 4K, it never stopped recording. So it recorded the full 2.25 hours continuously, and that's kind of remarkable because it was a hot day even though it was indoors. Possibly if you're recording in full sunlight, yes, it can get overheated to the level of having to stop recording. But consider that if you buy the creator's combo, you also get this external battery in a grip. So you just simply plug it in and the camera is in a higher format, but you add 62% battery life so you can extend it quickly. But anyway, at some point you're going to run out of battery and you have to have a good charge. And in this case, that's excellent news, although the charger is not included in the box. But it is compatible with power delivery chargers. So in my case, I charged it with a 65-watt charger, which is the maximum charge it supports. And in 16 minutes, it gets to 80% and the full charge finishes in 32 minutes. So it recovers energy very quickly, and that is excellent news in a camera of this format. Finally, let's see what we can do through its app. Notice that it immediately detects the camera. The connectivity, I've noticed, is much faster with an iPhone. With an Android, maybe you can get to take a little longer, or you have to manually connect it through the Wi-Fi network. So once you access connect to the camera, you're going to notice that we can open the camera and have a viewfinder of what this camera is capturing. In fact, we also have the joystick, so we have full remote control of the camera to be able to use it. Obviously, we can also start recording, rotate, absolutely everything that we can manage through the camera. We can manage through the cell phone, although now with much more space to change all kinds of controls more easily. So it could be a good tool. Also here we can switch between the different modes like panorama, and we can access the mode to stream live to Facebook, YouTube, or an RTMP signal, so you have a specific key to stream. Then, with this configuration, the camera will directly send the information. You will only use the cell phone to make the connection, but the camera will transmit directly. So it can become an easier process as well. And on the other side, we have the other modes such as hyperlapse, time-lapse, slow motion, low light mode. It is exactly the same as we have already seen in the camera. But this application is not only going to serve us to access the camera, but also to access all the pictures that we have taken directly. See how from here you can easily extract these videos. You can export them to have them as files on your mobile device. The progress is displayed here, and the transfer is considerably fast. So just like that, you can transfer all your videos and photos from your camera to your mobile device. In addition, it also integrates an editor directly into this application. One part with artificial intelligence and another part where you can create manually. Although with artificial intelligence, surely for some it will still be a bit random editing. So I would recommend more manual editing, but perhaps to create a blog or something similar could be useful. See how it will do an analysis of the files. It will more or less try to notice the highlights, and after that it will generate the video automatically. Although unfortunately in this case I already made several attempts, and in each one of them it says that the intelligent analysis failed. So I think I would not recommend this type of editing with artificial intelligence, but as I say, fortunately you can get to put here the editing completely manually. You simply choose the clips that you want to add to your video, and you can not only use clips recorded with the camera, but also clips recorded with the cell phone. So here we have all the effects available. It is a considerably good editor that obviously will not add any watermarks, so you can also add music, color filters, different effects, text, and various additional things. So it's good that we have these tools available to edit our video directly from the cell phone. And finally, you can also explore some courses to learn how to take advantage of all the features of the camera, especially with respect to the capture guides that can offer you some templates to capture immediately, applying different effects of movement in the camera. Obviously here you will also have a catalog of all the other products that this company has that have a tremendous variety. And with this we have come to the end of this video review. I hope you liked it. If you did, you know you can tell us, and we'll see you next time.